questions. Allow me to welcome back Judy Vilakazi first back onto the podium. She's going to be joining our panel. And let's give Judy a round of applause as she comes. Thank you, Judy. She's joined by Kasthuri Soni, who is the CEO of Harambee Youth Employment Accelerator. We've heard a little bit about Harambee, but we know it's a case study that we've become very familiar with in South Africa. So we're really interested in hearing Kasthuri's voice in the conversation. Thank you very much for being here, Kasthuri. We're also joined by Nazeem Hendricks. He's a senior finance specialist at the Jobs Fund. Let's give Nazeem a round of applause. And we know that the Jobs Fund, when we talk about the Jobs Fund, we're talking about 9 billion rand, but the big question here is how do we make sure that that is allocated in a way that really gives us maximum impact? And Nazeem is going to give us some of his thoughts there. I want to apologize that Kgabo Morifi couldn't be with us from the Gauteng City Region Academy. And so standing in for Kgabo, we have Cynthia Mutao from TS Africa Foundation. Cynthia, thank you so much for at such short notice agreeing to join and participate in the panel. Let's give Madame Cynthia a round of applause, please. As we get started with the conversation, let's just pull up the poll for this conversation, which we're going to then reflect on at the end of the conversation. And the poll really gets to the heart of how do we then bring technology into the problem-solving process of trying to solve for youth and job creation. And the question is, what role should technology play in youth employment? Is it, one, a threat to jobs, and therefore we should be focusing on reskilling? Is it an enabler of new careers, and so what we need to be doing is embracing AI and digital skills? Is it an opportunity for us to balance traditional skills and tech-driven skills? Or are you just unsure? Is the whole technology skills conversation so big that it leaves us with a great deal of uncertainty? And we'll come back to what you think about those responses. So to my panel, welcome and thank you once again. So Judy, I've just learned a new term, and that is tugging the lion's tail. So how is Telkom tugging the lion's tail? And in essence, what I mean is how is Telkom moving the dial on youth unemployment? And as you speak to it, I mean, you already began to outline some of the things there, but what I'm interested in is how are you ensuring that it's sitting as a core focus of the business? It is not isolated as a CSI function or just sits in the Telkom Foundation only. And if we remember Nick's comments earlier, he was talking about benefit to business, benefit for society. To what extent is Telkom realizing benefit for business in the work that you're doing?
Thank you, Nozi. So Telkom is quite deliberate about empowering young people and opening up opportunities so that they can further, enhance the different skills that they come up with. So we've got different technical skills that we enroll some of our young people through. For example, we are big on providing technical skills to ensure that we've got technicians, in the future. And there we are also driving for female technicians. We also do other skills like your AI and your web development and all of that. But from a foundation point of view, we also are deliberate about going to high schools and equipping young people with the future skills like your coding and making sure that they are being exposed, to the future digital skills. And how we are tagging the tail, like you're saying, is by making sure that our young people are aware that these are the skills of the future. And the benefits that we are deriving from that is that we're building a future talent pipeline. We are able to absorb some of those young people into our organization. And then we are also seeing business growth as we absorb some of those skilled young people. We also, engage quite extensively with our stakeholders that are also providing those skills to, understand how we can improve the type of skills. Is it suitable, for the different qualifications that some of them are coming with? And then, of course, we also benefit, from a reputation perspective,
Yes.
because we are committed, to playing our part in addressing some of those social challenges. Yeah, thank you.
So it's a really strong opening as you speak both to the business but also what you're doing in society. Maybe just a quick follow-up on that, Judy. The big conversation around technology and jobs is net, are we going to lose jobs or are we going to gain jobs? In your view, and from the perspective of Telkom, I would imagine that it's not such a clean dichotomy, loss or gain of jobs. It's potentially a both and. How do you get your stakeholders to consider that and ensure that young people are not observers of the future economy we're building, but actually active participants of it?
Sure, Nozi. It is true that when you start talking about, the skills of the future, it can be seen as a challenge to some of, our own employees. There is that discussion that maybe it does have an impact on the employment. So other people actually feel like it's going to lead to a displacement of their current jobs. So what we do is to have open conversations at all times, to try and show them that there are new opportunities that can be derived from that, to try and bring about innovation that comes with skilling people with the future skills. And then, of course, what we also do is we play an active role in investing in research.
Yes.
To understand what is out there, and how we can also contribute, to the future research. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing, and Kasthuri, I want to bring this to you, is a lot of stakeholders are involved. And Kasthuri, again, I'm going to play on the analogy that I've just learned today, that it took the mouse pulling the tail of the lion to move the elephant. So everybody's involved. And so what I'd really like to hear from you is, how does the Harambee partnership model work? And to what extent have you found success in going the partnership philosophy in particular? And maybe let's start over there. Talk to us about your partnership model.
Thanks very much, and great to be here. I think that Nicola did a fantastic job of painting the context, but I also just want to restate the problem we're trying to solve. Actually, nearly 9 million young people not in employment, education, or training. And as she indicated, 1 million new labor market entrants each year, roughly 2/3 end up as NEETs. And the stats came out yesterday, 45% youth unemployment rate. And I think that means that we are all acutely aware that the scale, the depth, and the complexity of the youth unemployment challenge is too significant to be solved by any single actor in the ecosystem. And I think, Judy, you mentioned it up front, the need for large-scale public-private partnerships has never been greater and more urgent. And interestingly, Harambee was established as a public-private partnership model since its inception. Harambee has spent the last 13 years working in partnership with business, government, civil society, and actually young people themselves to build solutions that can accelerate youth economic inclusion at scale. And our experience has consistently shown us the power of partnerships in driving meaningful change. Harambee was founded by private sector, Nicola Galambik, actually our founder, and then the Jobs Fund came on board as an early adopter catalytic government partner that enabled us to test and build the model at scale. 13 years later, we are still in a strong partnership with the Jobs Fund in our capacity as an anchor partner in the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention, which is a national multi-sector coordinated program to address youth unemployment. Coming to your point around the practicalities of being in partnership, of course, every partner has their mandate, they have their constraints within which they operate. And in our experience, critical is a willing coalition, shared objectives, and values alignment, because that's when you can lean into difficulties, you can co-create solutions, and Nazeem can certainly bear testament to the journey we've walked with the Jobs Fund, as we've piloted innovations, I'm sure we have many war stories, but really it is a journey, but it requires that commitment to the shared goal. I do want to talk about a success, but you have a follow-on question?
No. I'm happy for us to talk about successes. Of course, my interest got piqued because I think you've used a word that's a trigger word for South Africans right now, coalition. So we'll take that in our step and just step over it. Kasthuri. But let's talk about the successes, because I think it is quite important where public-private partnerships are coming under scrutiny, where there's a lot of negative talk about the effectiveness and how partnerships really work. And here we have a case study that we can uphold and learn from. So if you could maybe do two things, the biggest success and the biggest challenge, because I think we have to take those both in our stride.
Sure. So let me start with the biggest challenge, and
Sure.
I'll end on the success. The challenge, like I said, is everybody has their own mandates. When you're in a partnership, you have to bring people on the journey with you. It's not only about your own operational capability, execution, and actually influencing where you do not control is harder, right? It's learning to co-create with people, and that's why I say that shared objectives and values alignment is critical. And it is leaning into difficulties. And actually, if you have a shared vision of what you're trying to achieve, in my experience, it's when things go wrong, that's what makes for stronger partnerships, if you
Right.
do have those shared objectives and values alignment. And I mean, I just want to close with like a really wonderful success story. So through our public-private partnership with the Presidency, the Department of Employment and Labor, the Jobs Fund, DHET, and actually a network of private sector and civil society organizations, we have built the SA Youth Network,
Yeah.
which is a game changer for the youth of our country. And the SA Youth Network is a network of nearly 4 million young people who receive free access to aggregated earning and learning opportunities, as well as work seeker support. No data costs. In one place, they come to it and they are able to access opportunities. And importantly, the SA Youth Network also gives employers access to a young talent pool that are ready to be matched to opportunities. And as Nicholas said, not just using your traditional CV, but
Yes.
actually giving you line of sight to what is their potential, what is their problem-solving capability, and you're able to get quality talent throughout the country that's hassle-free, cost-free, and convenient to you. So that's been a major success story of the work that we've done over the last 13 years through this PPP model.
Yeah, Kasthuri, that's really great to hear that balanced perspective. And what I really also like what you've said is that the test of the partnership is when things go wrong. And I think that couldn't be more true. Nazeem, let's bring the Jobs Fund into the conversation and maybe just give you an opportunity for you to talk us through the model. How does the model actually work? And maybe you can also comment on what's been achieved to date.
Okay. Thank you. And pleasure to be here. It's an honor, really, to be part of this deliberations. So the Jobs Fund was established in 2011, and I think I should start with what we're not, right? So the Jobs Fund is not a mass job employment program. We are never going to create 1 million jobs, as the Presidential Youth Employment Intervention, EPWP, all of those public employment programs are likely to do. What the Jobs Fund was established for was based on a recognition that the models and principles that is applied within the labor market and instruments applied by government doesn't work. All right? So our job is to use the allocation. We are a unit of national treasury, correct? We were allocated 9 billion in 2011. What the Jobs Fund role is to test new models, is to test and develop new ways of doing things, that has been done. It's not necessarily rocket science, but it's new approaches to doing and creating jobs and getting people into work, young people in particular. Now, how do we do this? Of course, Nicholas spoke about the demand. We are all hamstrung by the lack of growth in the economy, right?
Yeah.
So not much we can do there on our side. the jobs fund model is based on demand side and supply side. On the demand side is unlocking a particular constraint that is in that demand side, i.e. the one of the panel members this morning was talking about going into Spa, right? Trying to get customers out of Spa to his. The jobs fund will ask a question, so why is he not supplying Spa?
Right.
Right? It is unlocking those type of constraints and whatnot. And then partnerships. I mean, Kasthuri spoken about it. We've had previous speakers this morning talking about partnerships, right? And Professor this morning spoke about there's a problem between the private and the public sector, and we acknowledge that, right? There's maybe, if I can go as far as to say, there's maybe a lack of trust between the two elements. But I think the Jobs Fund, through its 163 projects, have shown that it is possible for the private sector and the public sector to work together, provided that there is a clear structure and plan for that to happen, right? It's got to be collaboration on equal terms, right? Public sector will often say, yes, but the private sector is just here to make money. Well, in the Jobs Fund's view is, if no business creates a job, whether it's an SME, a farmer, a big business like FNB, nobody creates a sustainable job unless they're making money, unless they can afford it, right? So for us, it's about collaborating, understanding each other's needs and collaborating in that sense. It is about innovation, new ways of doing things. It is about institutional capacity. Kasthuri spoke about the relationship with Harambee. A lot of people will look back at those projects and say they were work-seeker projects, taking young people and putting them into jobs. If you look at back now, it actually wasn't that, right? It was about building a capacity in the market. And I think the evidence is sufficient to say we've been pretty successful in doing that. It wasn't easy. She will tell you, we've had many fights, many arguments, but you know, the point is we had a common goal.
Yeah.
And we worked towards that goal despite the problems. And the last thing I want to talk about, why partnerships are important, is reach and networks. You know, government knows we can't do this alone. We don't have the money for it. But more importantly, or as important, we do not have the reach. We do not have the networks. So partnering with the likes of private sector, with the likes of social networks and so forth, so that we actually have access to the young people in the areas that we need to address. And very often, government will make money available for a particular, but there's a problem with how the money is made available, right? So we will often say, and Kasthuri will know this, many of our programs is, we'll give you R1 billion for argument's sake, but 950 million must go towards the young people, which is fantastic, right? The problem is you're not building capacity on the ground. And if those NGO, NPC type organizations, you do not build the capacity, how do you then scale that program to 10 billion? Because the capacity doesn't exist for that flow to get to the local communities. Very importantly, and I think this is where the Jobs Fund is slightly different to many other programs, is one of sustainability, right? So when we look at a project, we look at sustainability at a number of levels. We look at the sustainability of our partner. If we need to focus a particular part of the project on building that sustainability, we will do so, obviously within reason. We will look at the sustainability of the intervention beyond the Jobs Fund's focus, and we will look at sustainability of the SME that we supported. Because that SME doesn't create a job simply because you give him a grant or a cheap loan or whatever. He does it because he can afford it. Now, what have we achieved? I think what we have achieved, firstly, and most importantly, is we've learned. We've learned what works and what does not work and what is required to build that partnership. So in terms of numbers, we've reached our target. We had an initial target of 150,000 permanent jobs. We've done over 220,000 of those. We've done 110,000 or facilitated 110,000 short-term jobs. But I think that doesn't do justice to what we've done, right? Yes, it's important. But we've also supported 75,000 SMMEs
Yeah.
as well as smallholder farmers, not smallholder, emerging farmers. And from a sustainability perspective, what makes us even more comfortable what we've done over and above the 200,000, even more important, the projects that has completed implementation within the Jobs Fund program, they have created 53,000 jobs after completion, right? So now those 53,000 jobs was not dependent on the grant funding that we provided. It was because we had developed a sustainable model. And for us, that's the key in forming, this youth employment. And the last point I can make, if I may, is, and I am a finance person, I came into the Jobs Fund, I had no respect for this at the time. My view has completely changed, and that is one of a robust M&E framework.
Yeah.
If you don't have that, you can't measure impact, right? You can't learn, you can't succinctly draw your learnings from what you've learned, because I can tell you, you do 20 projects, a good proportion of those will fail, right? It's not the point that it's failed, it's about what you draw, the learnings you draw out of it, and disseminate those learnings to the rest of the market so we all learn together, right? Thank you.
So Nazeem, I think it was such a comprehensive answer that I'm not going to do a follow-up, but I thought it was absolutely fantastic because you not only talked to us through the model and how it works, clarified what you're not, because it at least helps us get clarity in terms of what the Jobs Fund is intended for and to better understand your mandate. But you went to give us also an example of your programs, including what you look for in partners that you would then partner with. And I think that's really important, the capacity question, the scale question, the sustainability question. Because when you mentioned, and I know you said it offhand, we can give you R1 billion. I think I felt people sit up in the room at the mention of the R1 billion. But when you begin to talk about the requirements and the criteria and how that works, I think it's super, super important. Madam Cynthia, let me then bring you into the conversation and ask you to just start us off with TSA Africa Foundation. What does the foundation do? What is the mandate of the foundation, and how are you part of problem solving for young people looking for jobs?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And may I also take this opportunity to thank you for having, squeezed me in at the last minute. And I hope I'll do justice to that. The Africa Foundation has been founded on the premises of, trying to or attempting and even implementing those aspirations of taking our youth where they are, because our concentration is mainly on empowering our youth in terms of transferring appropriate skills that are relevant to their needs. And what we have realized through our relationship with Telkom is to say, technically, there is a backlog. And how can we make a difference as a non-profit making organization? However, part to that is also to come up with developing an ecosystem within the welfare situation, because professionally I'm a qualified social worker, and this it's an Africa Foundation. It's a foundation that has been initiated by my family. We are running a restaurant called South Africa, well-known restaurant in the country called South Africa, and that's where we thought as a family, this is payback time. Let us do something noble on empowering our youth and making sure that the empowerment strategy is very sustainable and, going into a partnership with Telkom was very exciting because they bought into what we presented to them in terms of taking this initiative to a different level. So currently, we are training We facilitating training, and we are now on our on our fourth year. No, we are on our third year. Striving to if
Here's the pitch. If Telkom does the right thing.
If Telkom does the right thing, because we do have a contract with them for 5 years pending on our performance.
Of course.
So we are now on the third year. So we're comfortable on that, and we think we are doing very, very well on that front. We have, challenges that we would naturally have in terms of starting this new exercise. Would advertise nationally to appoint 210 learners. And as soon as we advertise, and that to me demonstrated how dire the situation is, because we'd advertise in 3 days, we'll be having nothing less than 4,000 applicants.
Yeah.
And we only have 210 to address from our relationship and partnership with Telkom. It shows how serious the issues are and how desperate
And
our matriculants are.
What does Star Africa train on? What is the focus areas?
The focal area it's on business development and business development, and we also try to go into systems development and actually business analysis.
I've got you.
So those are the key components that we concentrate on in terms of training.
And so that's quite important that you've highlighted that. I think the mismatch between the application and what you actually can absorb, I think, again, speaks to the numbers. But it's also interesting to listen to the skills that you focus on, because, again, we've been hearing that the pathways need to be multiple, so that there are real opportunities to go into entrepreneurship, to start a business, to become a job creator, and not only look for employment. I'm going to ask the team to also bring me a handheld mic for Madame Cynthia as well. I've got quite a few questions that have come through on the app, and I just want to squeeze as many of those in as possible. There's a question from Natalie. It's for you, Nazeem. I'm going to ask us to be brief because I've got 16 minutes and I've got quite a bit. Natalie is saying, Nazeem, how much of the 9 billion has been spent? And what percentage of that has actually resulted in real jobs? So you gave us a sense of some of the successes, you shared some of the numbers, but what percentage of that is real jobs? And then Natalie also says, has the Jobs Fund calculated how much does it cost to create one real job? And I think that those are all excellent questions. Over to you, Nazeem.
I think on the number itself, of course, part of the 9 billion was to fund the operational cost of the Jobs Fund. So at the moment, we have allocated the balance, which is roughly about 8 billion, close to 8 billion. That's been fully allocated in the market. We've disbursed to date just over 7 billion of that. And we will be looking to do the balance of that over the next 18 to 24 months, right? Of course, just like every other government department in the country, we are waiting for allocations from Treasury. And that is, when that happens and how that happens, I don't know. Up to the powers that be, as we all know, the public purse is very constrained at the moment. So certain choices are having to be made.
And the cost of creating a real job, if you could give us a sense of how much does it actually cost?
I think our cost, if you look at all the jobs that we've created to date, right? And remember, this goes over 11 years. So you've got to take inflation into account. You've got to take the different types of projects you've done. It's roughly at about 27,000 Rand per job, right?
Okay.
Now, that may seem high to some people, but one thing you must remember, our focus is on permanent jobs, right? Tracer studies have shown our jobs, length of our jobs is about just over 3 years,
Okay.
all right? And then we've got to look at complexity. Over time, the complexity of the projects have developed a lot, right? So they tend to be a little bit more expensive. Let's say in agriculture, where you're building infrastructure on behalf of the farmer, right? Those tend to be a bit more, right? And one thing I want to caution, when you try and calculate the cost of a job in a particular project, be careful that you do not only do it over the 2 years.
Got you.
Because remember, you're putting the systems in place for jobs to be created over the longer term. If you simply look at 2 years, you may not get the right answer.
All right, and then that's quite insightful to hear you talk about, well, from experience, really, as how to get to that number. Judy, there's a question from Kgabo, and Kgabo is saying, where do we find detailed data on what entry-level jobs remain vacant and what skills are really needed? And Kgabo goes on to say, we seem to speak a lot about coding, but how many coding jobs are there really? And where are they? And I think we could apply that to anything, right? It could be coding, it could be robotics, it could be whatever the case is. But in essence, do we have a good understanding of where the gaps actually are, how many of those jobs, so that we are training for the gap?
Nozi, thank you for that question. I think, honestly speaking, at the moment, we don't have a lot of the coding jobs. However, when you go into the different programs that, I'm in the telecom space, when you go into those companies and you try and understand what is their future outlook, that's where you actually see that, the future is turning towards that, and hence we see the need to train young people in those type of skills. Nowadays, they're talking about the Internet of Things, they're talking about AI and automation and all of that. So I think we need to prepare ourselves for those future jobs. At the moment, you might find that it's not a lot, simply because we don't have enough people that are skilled in that area.
Yeah.
However, we need to play our part and actually prepare our young people. I think this is also informed by the monitoring and evaluation framework that we do. So this is important for us in terms of evaluating our success.
Yeah.
And basically, we do this from a quantitative and a qualitative perspective. And we also try and align that, to the overall business objectives and the goals. And when we look at our strategy, this is where we see the need to be investing more in training young people in those type of skills, because we realize that it's actually a need. We've heard from research that, more of those people that have those type of skills are actually leaving the country.
Yeah.
So it is our role to play as private sector to make sure that we build that pipeline and we skill more people in those future skills. And also the feedback that we get, from some of our stakeholders to say, there is also a need for private company to invest more in the future skills. So I think that is what informs our thinking in terms of training and investing more in those type of skills.
No, can I just
Jump in, go for
jump
it.
in just again as an example of the power of the partnership, where it's not just about Telkom. So Nicola had mentioned the Collective X. The Collective X is an NGO that we co-incubated, which is looking at exactly within the ecosystem, where are those jobs? And have actually, through research, identified over 60,000 entry-level jobs that we end up offshoring because we don't have the skills. And so the Collective X, over the next 3 years, has identified 7 in-demand job families and has a goal of 10,000 over the next 3 years, working again in this public-private partnership model to create those skills. So it's not just about the telecoms, but it's about the telecoms, the Microsofts, everybody
Yes.
coming together to understand we've got to solve this together at a systems level. It isn't one company that's going to solve it on its own.
And maybe let's just build on that, because there's a question from Jacques, and Jacques is saying, Kasthuri, do you think that we could take the current youth that are on the network, on the SA Youth Network, and actually create profitable businesses on the back of those young people. And if you think that's a possibility, how would that happen? And so what I'm hearing Jacques saying is, it's great to have a network of young people, but surely they can't all be waiting for a job.
Absolutely.
Can we leverage that density in order to help them to start businesses of their own? Is that a thinking we're bringing in by any chance?
Absolutely. So again, you heard the word pathway management, and I
Yes.
think, Nicola, it's very clear we need economic growth for new jobs and sustainable livelihoods. In the absence of that, Harambee's programs and initiatives focus exactly on keeping young people productively engaged, meaningfully participating in the economy, growing their employability skills, giving them hope, and helping them progress from one opportunity or pathway to the next. So in the absence of a job, how do you get young people to participate in self-enterprise and make money for themselves? How do you create scaffolding, actually realizing that it's too risky for a young person? We've actually got to step in, help give them access to market, access to capital, access to skills. And because these opportunities are short-term, how do you help them illuminate, once they're done with one, what's the next
Yes.
thing and the next thing, and how do we help them transition? The idea being to keep them economically active for as long as possible, earning a resilient income, and that's what the sayouth.mobi platform does. And I would say all opportunities matter, including public employment programs.
Yes.
Our data shows that it helps springboard them from one to the next in the absence of enough jobs.
So I want to build on that point, and I want to come to you, Madam Cynthia, because Kasthuri, you raised such an important point to say, how do we keep them economically active and engaged? The young people that come into your learnership process, where do they go when they are done? Do you see them going into jobs? Do you see them starting businesses? What actually happens to everybody who completes the training? Can I? Yeah.
A very good concern, which, you know, we will always mitigate on it. For instance, with our intervention through our relationship with Telkom, we have placed at least 20%, we can, without any fear of criticism,
Yes.
the efforts that we have taken, we're able to place in permanent jobs. 20% of our learners
Yeah.
in permanent jobs, as I said. However, we have been evaluating that process to say training for 12 months, 8 months a theory and
4 months practical.
4 months practical. It's not practical at all, because even the outside world doesn't want to invest in somebody through their employment strategy for 12, that has got 12 months experience. They feel very uncomfortable. So we feel these learnerships to go into, learners to go into a learnership for 12 months is not enough. Hence, we need to prolong at least 2 years, can give a prospective employer the confidence that there is a lot of matter in this particular young person. And then that again, you know, the kind of small research that we have done, we've realized that it's now becoming a trend for our youth to know when the new applications are coming out for learnerships. They become seasoned beneficiaries of learnership. They don't
So
care
professional
whether
learnership,
yes.
over and over again,
Over
the
and
same
over.
learnership.
Some are double dipping, triple dipping. You know, it's very difficult to manage the entire 46% of unemployed youth in terms of who is double dipping, who is benefiting more than they are supposed to. It's a challenge that we
Yeah.
need to always think about it, because it's a reality that we are faced with.
I think you, I'm going to be provocative because we're about to close, but I think you're raising a very important issue. The revolving door of learnerships is a conversation we just have got to crack. And this idea that learners would, instead of getting permanent jobs, will just go through learnership after learnership after learnership and stuck in sort of that 2.5 to 5,000 rand band until they hit an age where it almost doesn't make sense for them anymore. The other thing that you raise, and I think I notated it here, is, and then my train of thought is gone, but I'll come back to it. But I think, I have a personal experience of a young sister who's just been a professional learnership for the last 8 years. And so after every 12 months, it's a new contract and a new contract and a new contract. And we've got to crack this for the country. So let's do the following. Let's look at the poll that we put together. Let's see what that poll looks like. Let's see what our audience thinks. And then let's see what you think on the back of that. So, technical team, if you can put up the poll for me, there it is. It's quite small at the moment, but let's see. The question that we had put up in the beginning is, let's see, it's behind us here. It's also still quite small. So, I'm going to pull it out on my notes, rather. Can we make it bigger, please? We can see what role should technology play in employment. Is it a threat to jobs? Therefore, we need to focus on reskilling. Thank you very much. Is it an enabler of new careers? Therefore, we need to embrace AI and digital skills. Is it a balance, an invitation to a balance between traditional and tech-driven skills, or 1% of us are unsure? Now, I'm going to put this to you, Judy. More than half of the room is saying technology is an enabler of new careers. And this is our invitation to embrace AI and digital skills. Your reaction to that?
I think I agree with this, Paul. I'm even thinking of some of the work that we are doing through the Transformation and Innovation Department, where we are sponsoring young students, PhD students, with research. I mean, there's been great research that has come out where, with the partnership with University of Pretoria and UJ, they managed to investigate the analyzing of sinkholes using, technology. I think it was optic fiber sensor. And then there's another research that came through where they were using drone technology, to understand how they can protect livestock.
Yeah.
So I definitely believe that, we need to change our mindset and embrace the fact that, AI and digital skills is the future. It's not going away. It's an enabler for the new jobs or the new way of doing things.
Yeah.
So I agree with the poll.
So you agree with the poll. Thank you so much. And my thought has come back. It was the question of the requirement of work experience in the context that we have as South Africa, and whether as a country we need to review the requirements of 5 years experience for entry-level jobs, and to begin to ask ourselves, where are we expecting these young people to have gotten the experience from? So again, a provocation for us to think about. Now, I realize that I'm being, in our language we say, ninkremile, I'm being crammed. So what that means is that people have caught on to what is coming, so they're quickly preparing. So I have to change tactics. So instead of giving you a billboard that says the future of, because I heard preparation already happening in one corner, I'm going to change the billboard. Right? And you're going to give me, because it's the last one, it's got to be a little bit harder. The billboard starts off with the following sentence or following words: young people will thank us for. You complete the sentence. Young people will thank us for. You complete the sentence. Okay? Again, it's a billboard, nothing more, not a speech, not an executive summary, just a billboard. So, who's looking at me? Kasthuri is looking at me directly in the face. She's got it. So we're going to go for that. Kasthuri, young people will thank us for.
Young people will thank us for backing them with intentional investment and support. They have the answers, they are the solution, not the problem, and they will thank us for helping them to build a more inclusive
Where are we putting
economy.
this billboard? No, whoa. Because terminal A to terminal B is taken. We don't have that much space anymore. So can I take the first part? Young people will thank us for backing them with intentional
investment and support.
and support. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give Kasthuri a very big round of applause. All right. Nazeem is looking away so that we just don't connect. So let's see. Madam Cynthia, let me come to you. Young people will thank us for?
Having given them the opportunity.
Let's do that again.
For having given them the opportunity.
Young people will thank us for having given them the opportunity. Let's give Madam a big round of applause. Thank you very much. Nazeem, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Young people will thank us
Young
for?
people will thank us for putting systems and structures in place that actually work.
I think I really like that. They'll thank us for putting systems and structures in place that actually work. Let's give Nazeem a big round of applause. Judy, you get to take us home. So this is yours. Young people will thank us for.
So before I contribute that, I want to think of an African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, you go alone.
Yes.
And if you want to go far, then we go together. So I think young people will thank us for coordinated collaboration in creating employment.
Young people will thank us for coordinated collaboration in creating employment. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask you just to stay on stage with me, just hang out with me for the next 2 minutes while I make a few announcements and get us ready for our post-lunch. But before that, ladies and gentlemen, just a big round of applause for my panelists, please. They've done a fantastic job. I want to just bring to your attention a comment that we picked up from the chat, another winner of our NPO listing. It comes from Nandipa, and this was during the conversation around transforming agri-ecosystems. And this is what Nandipa had to say. Agricultural education needs to be compulsory in the curriculum at school. This will foster love for farming, and it will guarantee food security for the nation. And she goes on to say, in Xhosa we say, "Bagotwa bebacha," and that is we start young. And direct translation in English is we bend them while they are young. But that is, we're not bending them, but we're bending them. Because it really is about inculcating the idea that farming, agricultural, the entire value chain is a really attractive sector to be in as a young person. Allow me at this moment from our seated position to ask the room to give a massive round of applause for our online audience who drop off at this point. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for staying online and connected. We hope to see you at 15:45 when Dr. Imtiaz Suleiman comes and gives us his closing keynote. We're going to be streaming that, and so we invite you to be a part of that. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to break for lunch now. As we break for lunch, please grab your bags with you. We're going to turn the room around like we did yesterday. My apologies for not announcing that yesterday. So when you come back, the room is going to be rearranged. And so, remember that today we had 2 themes, just like we did yesterday. Can I get a show of hands? How many people are intending joining the breakout session on transforming agri-systems? Just a show of hands. Thank you very much. How many people are intending joining the conversation on that we've just had on job creation and youth? And let's get a show of hands. Okay. So the session on job creation and young people will happen here towards the front of the room, and the session on transforming agri-systems will happen at the back of the room. Let me also just make sure that I haven't forgotten anything else. Remember, please, your feedback forms. We'd really appreciate those physically in the box at the Trialogue exhibition stand before 4 p.m. And the winner will be announced at the keynote closing, which is going to be happening in the restaurant area. But the breakout session facilitators will tell you exactly where to go. Please remember, yesterday we had the luxury of a 90-minute lunch. Today, it's a 1-hour lunch. So it's 1 o'clock now, and the sessions will start at 2 o'clock sharp. So please make sure that you're there. My final job, and this one I'll have to do standing out of courtesy and respect, is to thank our sponsors one last time. Ladies and gentlemen, please, a final round of applause for APSA, for First Rand, for Rand Water Foundation, for Sanlam, for Telkom, for Vodacom, for the IDC, for Volkswagen, for Momentum, for MTN, for Standard Bank, for Prime Media. Let's give them a big, big round of applause. Thank you so very much. My final word is to say ngiyabonga. Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I've learned so much from all of you. Thank you for everybody who's been participating in the questions. It felt great to have your voice here on stage, channeling the conversation as well. Until next time, ngiyabonga.